team, today we get to talk about time management. I know some of you are in the crunch of exams right now and it's the last thing you want to hear, but for those of you that just want to tuck it away and just get your stuff done this week, that's great. For others, this might be applicable to you right now. But before we get there, I just want to talk about the upcoming events. This Friday is Brett Ullman. It's for senior high and for parents. Again, he's talking about depression, suicide, and just life in general, dealing with all sorts of issues. A great thing to come out to. I'd really like to see almost all of our leaders there if we can get there. He gives us some great tools in our toolbox for just dealing with life. And so that's happening this Friday. Please invite your students to come to that. Following Friday, senior high is Momentum. It's our last Activate Arena of the year. And it's always, as I hear, a crazy event to come to. We need some leaders for that. We also want you to invite your students. And then May 15th is our last Activate Junior. And for that, we're doing Operation Condor. And I won't give you much more than that, other than it's got a cool name. Make sure you get the junior highs there and invite those grade sixes too that are in your groups. So, time management. Well, to talk about time management, I want to take us back a number of years to a guy named Dwight D. Eisenhower, a former president of the United States. He had this quote, and it says, "I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." Dwight Eisenhower was said to have a system of dealing with his time management, and specifically with problems and how he dealt with them, in sorting them into urgent and important. Now, many people have used this idea since, and there's this system called some people call it the Eisenhower Matrix. Basically, it's using this idea of important and urgent in 4 different quadrants. And I'm going to explain it to you, and it's a helpful tool to use to kind of figure out how you should manage your time. You see, the first level of time management is simply your things to do list. I got to do all these things. Sometimes we get stressed. We go, okay, I got to write this down on the things to do list because I'm going to forget what I have to do, and then I won't do it. The kind of second level of that is we make a priority list where we put the number 1 priority at the top, and then we prioritize which things we're going to do. Because often, if you're like me, we have the hesitancy to go to the things that we have the most fun doing first, but maybe not the things that are most priority first. And so we make a priority list. Well, the next level of kind of time management might be this Eisenhower Matrix for you. And I just want to explain it to you quite simply and then give you a challenge. So how this is done is you draw on a piece of paper, you draw 4 boxes, 4 quadrants or divisions. And once you've drawn those, then on the left side, you write important and not important. And then on the top, you write urgent, not urgent. In quadrant 1 is where we find the urgent and important. This is like the unavoidable quadrant. We have to deal with this quadrant. For example, someone gets sick in your family or you yourself get sick. You have to deal with that. That's urgent and it's important. Someone dies and there's a funeral. That obviously is urgent and important. Sometimes there's calls that you take, and they're just important emergency calls to take. And then for many of us, we have a weekly program or weekly schedule. For example, Wednesday nights. I would say for me, it is important and urgent that I be at my work. And so those are important and urgent things. You got to show up for those kind of things. So that quadrant is unavoidable. Not much we can do with that. We can schedule that, but it's pretty much as it comes. The next quadrant I want to look at is quadrant 3. That is the urgent and not important. And this is the stuff that steals probably some of the most of our time. And so what we find in this quadrant is we find, checking the emails. I would encourage some of you guys to track when you check email, when you check Facebook, when you look and respond to texts, how often that is. How long does it take you? But then whatever tasks you're doing at that time, how long does it take you and distract you away from those tasks? And I would gather that often the ones that are urgent but not important would take away a lot of your time. So that's the quadrant 3. Now quadrant 4 is probably the most useless quadrant. This is where we find stuff like Xbox and PS4 and Netflix and TV and Facebook creeping when we're just kind of hanging out on the couch, or any kind of useless stuff. And you can fill that box with, the things are kind of useless to do in your life. They have no gain for you. They're not important, and they're completely useless. But we do them, and this takes up time as well. Now, sometimes, just a proviso, we find stuff in that quadrant that we do to rest and relax, and that's okay. But sometimes we spend so much time resting and relaxing that we're not getting anything else done. So the final quadrant I want us to look at, and this is the most important one I think, is the not urgent and important. And this is probably the most neglected quadrant. You see, this is stuff like our devotions and connecting with God. This is stuff like booking off time to spend with family, to spend with friends, and foster those relationships that we have in our life. And even just self-development, just reading books, things that you want to grow in. But often we put it off because I can catch that on YouTube later, or I can Google that. And we neglect this quadrant. And I want to encourage you, if you want to be a man or woman of God, then you got to make the time to actually spend with Him. If you want to develop a certain skill, maybe it's photography or video, well, then you got to spend the time of practicing that skill and developing yourself. If you want to have a great relationship, if you want to be a good husband or father or mother or wife or friend, those things take time, and we often don't give the time they need. And so here is my challenge for you this week. Look at these quadrants, write down the things that you have in those quadrants. Think about your goals for your life, what things you want to accomplish. And then this week, I'm not going to ask you to fill out your whole schedule, but at least put 2 or 3 things from quadrant 1 budgeted into your schedule this week. If you have a weekly calendar, you write down, budget those things in. So I'm going to spend time at least, and try to do them for at least an hour at a time. So I'm going to spend an hour basically hanging out with my family this week. Now, I'm going to spend more time hanging out with my family, but if this is the first time you budgeted that, budget an hour. Or I'm going to spend an hour here, spending time with God. So take a significant amount of time and budget that at least 2 or 3 times this week. Quadrant 2 type stuff. Quadrant 1 stuff will always come up. And then also, this is what I want you to do. There's that quadrant 3 stuff that I said takes the most of your time. I want to encourage you to budget that as well. Take 3 things, maybe it's emails, maybe it's Facebook, whatever, and budget those in your week. So for example, on Tuesday, budget at 11:30, I'm going to check emails for 15 minutes, half an hour. Make sure it's a smaller time. And then do not touch email for the rest of the day. Or maybe you need to put 2 times, one in the morning, one in the afternoon for 15 minutes. But put that in there, but then have the discipline of not touching whatever you put in there for the rest of the day and only handling it at that. So when you get the ding or the beep or whatever, you just say, I'm not going to look at that until this time in the day. Is that cool? That's my 2 challenges. So budget some stuff that's important but not urgent, and then also budget the stuff that takes away your time and don't give other time to it. That's what I got for you today. I really appreciate you guys as leaders. I'm excited. This is our last week in houses, but I've been really excited just watching how things have happened over this last year, and so excited for what God has in store for us. Thank you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.